Thank you for being part of the fight for freedom, MRC's College Unbound American Re-Education Program. In our previous sessions, we explored the logical, moral, and economic problems with Marxism and collectivism. We hit the incentive problem, the information problem, the calculation problem, and the overall trouble created by collectivism's smothering of resource discovery, a mess that is itself caused by collectivism's negation of the individual. Now we dive into Marx's 1848 black book, The Communist Manifesto, co-written and edited by Frederick Engels. We're going to understand its inconsistencies and see the planks that have been implemented in the United States already. Plank 1 is a whopper. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. Now, any sensible person might notice that this is internally contradictory, and it runs into the incentive problem, the information problem, and the calculation problem. If private land property is abolished, there can not only be no collection of rent by any owner, because of course there's no longer any true owner, but the economic calculation of land prices, or even what parcels actually are, is impossible. Without private ownership, no one can engage in market exchange to determine the borders and values of parcels or negotiate price. It makes the landscape one giant concentration camp, owned and controlled by the government. And it makes all the supposedly freed proletarians new forms of serfs. And we've seen how it plays out. The nationalization of land and industry in the USSR, Communist China, Vietnam, North Korea, Cambodia, Cuba, and Venezuela led to mass starvation and deprivation. Even in nations considered democratic nations, when collectivist ideas such as property seizure, heavy regulation, and welfarism have been introduced, the productive capacity of those nations has crashed.
We gather stuff, we beg a piece of chicken skin to take home. In the socialist utopia that now leaves nearly every stomach empty.
As economist Ludwig von Mises said in 1920, every step that takes us away from private ownership of the means of production and from the use of money also takes us away from rational economics. But of course, contemporary Marxists deny reality and the disastrous consequences of this first plank, and they call for even more, using the fruits of capitalism, such as cameras, communication technology, automobiles, farm food, supply chains, and even air travel to promote their crusade against capitalism, especially here in America. Already in the U.S., this property theft has been committed to varying degrees through land and home taxes, eminent domain, condemnation of properties, zoning, professional licensing, and so-called regulation of businesses. And a note for the so-called anti-fascists out there. The nominal, that is in name only, ownership of a business that is actually run beneath government diktats and so-called regulation is the technical definition of fascism. And the so-called right-wing fascists of World War II were really collectivists, enamored with Marxism. And we'll show you evidence of that later in our series. Now let's dissect plank 2, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. In fact, a visit to the National Taxpayers Union reveals that the U.S. income tax is, and always has been, highly so-called progressive. The IRS 2017 data shows that filers with AGI under $30,000 had an average income tax rate that was negative, thanks to the refundable credits. As filers' income increases, the average tax generally increased. Those in a range from below to just above the income of the middle class, with AGIs in the range from $50,000 to $200,000, paid an average income tax rate of 10.8%. The top 1%, incomes above $515,371, paid an average income tax rate of nearly 27%. According to federal government stats, the top 10% of U.S. wage earners, those earning $145,135 a year or more, paid 70.08% of all income taxes for 2019. The top 25% of all earners, those earning $83,682 or more per year, paid 86.10% of all income taxes. When Fox News' Ami Horowitz offered information on this topic to New York leftists in 2014, these people who had previously said that the rich don't pay their fair share.
Do the rich pay their fair share in taxes?
Absolutely not.
No?
Definitely not.
No, they don't.
Okay.
They don't. Probably anywhere.
No, you don't
They
think
should
so?
pay more.
No.
No?
No.
Were surprised to find out the truth.
The top 1% earn 19% of total income.
19?
Yeah. So what would be fair for them to pay?
Well, at least 19%.
So they pay 40%.
They pay 40.
I would probably put it up 40%.
40%? Do you know that's exactly what the 1% pay? 40%?
Really?
Yes.
And of course, many said that the rich should pay even more.
They should pay more.
Well, they should pay more.
But not only does this confiscatory taxation stifle the incentive to earn and start businesses, not only does it skim away the very profit needed to invest in new ventures, which could employ more first-time job holders, the view of rich is relative. It's subjective. Based on the conveniences he or she has obtained and the resources at his or her disposal, a person the federal government might list as poverty-stricken in the U.S. would be considered wealthy in many other nations. Yet, regardless of these facts and the deeper truth that taxation is theft of someone else's earnings, both Black Lives Matter and Antifa embrace Marx's ill-conceived expression of class envy in action. Now let's go to plank 3. Abolition of all right of inheritance. This is another form of theft. There's no moral difference between demonizing another person for handing wealth to a descendant and demonizing another person's purchase of a good or service, or how much time a person takes in conversation with another, or any other peaceful voluntary act. The attempt to prevent such activity or force the transfer to go in a direction other than what might have been chosen by the owner, in fact, any aggressive act to compel others and tell them how to live or stipulate how or what they may give away when they die is toweringly aggressive, immoral, and unethical. And such theft actually changes the manner in which people handle the wealth they acquire. Economists are well aware of the fact that people tend to spend sooner and with less care if they know they can't bequeath capital to loved ones. This changes the savings to spending ratio in the economy, it decreases investment capital, and it hampers the startup sector. Now, of course, we noted in part 1 that Karl Marx actually hungered for his own inheritance after his father died. He just didn't think others should be able to pass on or receive inherited wealth in their families. There was no hypocrisy there in any way whatsoever. And what's the story about inheritance confiscation in America? Well, at times in U.S. history, the inheritance or estate or death tax, as it is known, has been as high as 77% on estates worth $50 million or more, all to direct wealth into political channels rather than voluntary market channels. Plank 4. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. Who's a rebel? Well, that will be defined by the state. And guess what? When many Americans contemplated leaving the U.S. should Obamacare pass, President Obama and the Democrat-controlled House threatened those people with higher confiscatory taxes.
The only people who are impacted by the individual mandate, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it a penalty, a tax, a mandate, whatever it is, the only people who are affected are people who can afford health insurance, choose not to get it, and then force everybody else to pay for their health care when they get sick or they get in an accident. And what I've said, just like what Mr. Romney said up until 2 days ago, was those people should be held responsible.
Hi, I'm a thief. I'm going to steal from you, and if you run away, I'll catch you and take even more just to punish you. That's very neighborly, isn't it? Plank 5. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. How this contributes to freedom from being exploited, Marx never explains. But his idea has been implemented in the United States to the detriment of us all. At various times in U.S. history, the federal government has either granted a bank monopolistic control over the currency we use and thus over interest rates overall, or created its own inflationary central bank, such as the disastrous first and second banks of the U.S. in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. How this equates to freedom is unanswerable, and in every instance, central banking, whether conducted by the U.S. government controlling the money supply or by a monopoly bank created by the U.S. government, sees an inflation of the money supply and diminution of the buying power of the currency, leading to higher prices and the boom-bust cycle. In fact, since 1913, the Federal Reserve has decreased the buying power of U.S. currency by an average of 2% per year compounded. And now the Fed not only controls the currency we're legally forced to use, it buys federal debt, facilitating massive overspending by the U.S. government and an expansion of offices, favoritism, and the federal shadow over all of our lives. And thanks to the 2020 CARES Act, the Fed also now has the power to bail out corporations by buying their bonds without even telling the public which corporations the central bank is bailing out. And when it comes to other forms of lending, the U.S. also teeters close to Marx's troubling ideal. The United States government now handles nearly 100% of all college loans, and it or the Federal Reserve or U.S. corporate creations Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac handle nearly 100% of all home loans. Welcome to the United States of Marxism. You know, folks, I hope you'll give these first 5 planks of the Communist Manifesto and some alternatives some very serious thought. And if you'd be so kind, next time we'll explore the last 5 planks of the Communist Manifesto. We'll see how unworkable they are and explore how they have, or if we're really lucky, have not been implemented in the so-called land of the free. Meanwhile, let us know if you think these first 5 have been implemented in ways that we haven't even mentioned. Take our quiz and cause a stir by handing these videos and the quizzes to others. Remember the information and fight back by teaching your friends and family members about this and about other very important points dealing with freedom. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time for MRC. I'm Gardner Goldsmith. I hope you like what we're creating. This new endeavor is designed for you, and I hope you'll link through to the official site and sign on. You'll get special access to all the new videos, you'll get the fun quizzes you can take anytime, and you'll get special ideas to share with friends at this crucial time to gain in wisdom. It's all free. I hope you'll get in there and enjoy it.